and they vote, right? Some of the other sanctions need to be enforced. Things have to happen. Randy wanted to give you the tone of what it was like for us with the protesters that we've had this week, and then we're going to turn it.
The sincerity of the atmosphere, the attitude of people. I've been here from day one. You know that. We've met many times. But I've never felt such an urgency of the people that are just saying enough. Especially after the protest here, which we'd love you to address here in Washington, D.C. There's people that have questions, that live everyday life. You're here, you think these people go to work, they punch clocks, and we see things on the television against Israel from Washington, D.C., and people that vote want to know why. Why is it just rhetoric and not action? And why things are not getting done? Why does it take so long to get something done? It's the Democrats, we know. Yeah, absolutely. Thank you again. And as always, Pastor Madden, they said they're right. And thank you so very, very much. But we want you to address the people, and we'll leave the stuff here with you. But the kayak that is already passed the House, we would really, really, truly like to see that get done soon, very soon, like yesterday.
Yeah, I'm happy to.
Well, okay.
Senator Cruz.
Well, thank you so much. Welcome to Washington. I'm always happy to be in a room full of Texans. There is sanity and common sense that has come into the swamp. That doesn't happen often, so I'm thrilled to be with you. And let me say to all of you who are active and involved in CUFI, thank you for what you do. CUFI does an amazing job lifting up in prayer Israel and America, standing and speaking out for the strength of the U.S.-Israel friendship and alliance. And I gotta say, that need has never been greater than it is right now.
Yes.
Look, we're living in very frightening times. If you look at what happened on October 7th, October 7th was truly a horror. Over 1,200 people murdered on October 7th. Death squads going from house to house to house, murdering civilians because they were Jewish. Murdering elderly people, murdering women, murdering children, murdering toddlers and infants. Raping women, raping little girls. It was the worst mass murder of Jews in a single day since the Holocaust. Now, we know that what man means for evil, God can use for good.
Amen.
And I will say there are at least 3 positive outcomes that have come out in the wake of October 7th. Number 1, October 7th is a sorting mechanism. There is no gray, there is no ambiguity in the battle between Israel and Hamas. This is a battle between good and evil. It is a battle between civilization and barbarism. And it is an opportunity for every person to decide on which side of the line do you stand.
Yes.
That's valuable. Second, is Israel's commitment to utterly and completely eliminate Hamas. That's a big deal. Eliminating Hamas is unequivocally good for Israel,
And us too.
and it's unequivocally good for America. Understand, October 7th wasn't just an attack on Israel, it was also one of the worst terrorist attacks in history on the United States of America. And the Hamas terrorists that want to murder Jews, they want to murder all the rest of us as well. There is a reason these lunatics chant death to Israel and death to America. And the third positive thing that has come in the wake of the evil of October 7th is it has revealed the vicious anti-Semitism that has corrupted so many of our universities across the country. Now listen, I say revealed because nobody with any sense thinks that hate was absent on October 6th. All this did was bring it out into the open. And we've seen the viciousness, the hate. A few months ago, I was talking with a very successful businessman in Silicon Valley, who's a man of the left, he's a Democrat. And he was expressing bewilderment, complete confusion at where this hate, where this anti-Semitism was coming from. And I told him, I said, listen, this is the natural fruit of the poison of the cultural Marxism that has infiltrated our universities for decades. The last book I wrote is entitled Unwoke, How to Defeat Cultural Marxism in America. I wrote it before October 7th, but it explains exactly what's happening in our universities right now, which is in the Marxist worldview, society is divided into two groups, oppressors and victims. And today's leftist has defined Jews as oppressors. And they have defined Palestinians as victims. And by the way, note that I said Jews and not Israelis. The leftists who are protesting, they're not protesting the state of Israel, they are protesting Jews anywhere on the face of the planet. And once they assign those categories, for the Marxist ideology, they support the violent revolution and overthrow by the so-called victims of the so-called oppressors. There's a reason why, in the hours after October 7th, Black Lives Matter, the Chicago chapter, tweeted out, "We stand with Palestine," along with an image of a paraglider. The Hamas terrorists rode paragliders into the outdoor music festival to murder teenagers. There was no ambiguity to what they were saying. They support the murders. If you look at what's happened on campuses, places like Columbia and NYU, Harvard, UCLA, University of Washington, you see people chanting, "We stand with Hamas." Understand, they're not debating about political resolutions and disputes between the Israeli government and the Palestinian Authority. They're saying, "We stand with the terrorists who are murdering and raping innocents." There's an image that came out of Columbia where you had several students at Columbia, presumably Jewish students, who were standing there waving American flags and waving Israeli flags. And in front of them is a young woman wearing a mask because these protesters are oh so brave. They want to hide their face. But wearing a mask and holding up a handwritten sign that says Al-Qassam's next targets with an arrow at the students behind them. Al-Qassam is the military arm of Hamas. Now, the interesting thing about this student, if the internet is to be believed, she's not actually Palestinian. She's a little blonde girl from Atlanta, raised by multimillionaires. Raised in luxury, but she went to Columbia and her mind was poisoned, and it was poisoned to the extent that she thinks it's perfectly okay to advocate the murder of her fellow students. To hold up a sign proudly saying terrorists should murder their students. Why? Because they're Jews. We saw at Yale University when they pulled the American flag down to the ground, we saw spoiled little college students cheering the American flag in the dirt. University of Washington, protesters were chanting, "Send them back to the ovens." There is an ambiguity on this. It's evil. And so look, I will say each of you, what you're doing matters all the more now. It matters to stand up and speak the truth. It matters to stand with Israel, and I say this at a time when Israel is under assault unlike any time in my life. You know, for a long time, there has been something of a bipartisan consensus of standing with Israel. And that's been important. I want there to be a bipartisan consensus of standing with Israel. I will tell you the sad secret today is an enormous amount of that bipartisan consensus has unraveled. And today's Democrat Party more and more welcomes those who hate Israel, welcomes the anti-Semites. There is, and I say this without a word of hyperbole, a pro-Hamas wing of the Democrat Party. That is incredibly dangerous. But it also is a moment for us to respond with truth, with clarity, with light, with substance. As everyone here knows, last week Prime Minister Netanyahu spoke on the floor of the House to a joint session of Congress. I was proud to be there. I thought it was an extraordinary speech. I know Prime Minister Netanyahu very well. He's become a good friend. After the speech, I sat down with him one-on-one for about 45 minutes. I told him last week, I said his speech was Churchillian. That is an adjective I have not applied to any other world leader. It was freighted with the weight of the moment, with the awareness that the forces arrayed around Israel would drive Israel into the sea. That when you hear the zealots chanting from the river to the sea, now most of the numbskulls don't know what river or what sea, but they still want Israel destroyed. And clarity is powerful in sorting. I thought it was sad how many Democrats boycotted the speech. I thought it was pitiful that Kamala Harris refused to sit in the vice president's chair during that speech.
Then she want to be president.
Let's be clear, the vice president doesn't have a whole lot of official functions.
Right.
The
But
vice
one.
president basically goes to funerals
Yeah.
and waits to see if the president kicks the bucket. That's essentially the job description. But one other responsibility is when there's a joint session of Congress, it is presided over by the vice president, who's the president of the Senate,
Yes.
and the Speaker of the House. And Kamala Harris decided she was not even willing to listen to what the elected leader of Israel had to say. She wouldn't even show up. When Netanyahu walked in, as he walked down the aisle here, Chuck Schumer was right there. Schumer refused to shake his hand. That's the majority leader of the United States Senate, wouldn't shake Netanyahu's hand. Nancy Pelosi refused to attend the speech and said afterwards it was the worst speech by a foreign leader in the history of our country. And I'll say this is what worries me. It's not the squad. Look, the squad are a bunch of idiots. They're anti-Semites, they're haters, they're morons. But they're not the real problem. The problem is the so-called mainstream leadership of the Democrat Party is terrified of the squad. Which is why Kamala Harris boycotts the speech, which is why Nancy Pelosi boycotts the speech. Which is why Chuck Schumer stood on the Senate floor and demanded that Benjamin Netanyahu be thrown out of office. Now, mind you, he didn't call for the head of Hamas to be thrown out, or the head of Hezbollah, or the head of Iran, or the head of Russia, or the head of China, or for the head of Venezuela. No, he chose the democratically elected leader of the nation's only Jewish state. And I will say, I'm told in Jerusalem there was a joke about Schumer's speech, that the speech was entirely about the two-state solution. The two states being Michigan and Minnesota. And that's a sad reality of where we are in electoral politics. I can tell you, when the people of Texas elected me 12 years ago, I resolved then to be the leading defender of Israel in the United States Senate, and I have worked every single day to honor that commitment.